Hi, and welcome to the joy of tennis teaching. I've always loved the global nature of tennis. I was very lucky during my career to teach and play and coach tennis in 37 different countries, and I visited all 50 of the United States. One of the really gratifying aspects of this YouTube channel is in the last week I've heard from tennis coaches in Europe, Asia, Africa, South America, and again, many from North America. So thank you very much. The only places we haven't heard from are Australia, which has a great tennis culture. So if you're watching this in Australia, please let me know. And if you have coaching friends in Australia, please share it with them. And Antarctica. I'm not too sure if there's any tennis in Antarctica, but it's been great to get all the feedback from all of the coaches around the world. And thank you very much for your comments about these programs. Last week, we covered 4 of my 12 items that I feel every tennis coach should know. We talked about being a service professional first and a tennis professional second. We talked about how enthusiasm is contagious. We talked about the importance of learning names. And we also talked about the fact that don't depend on personality only. Personality only will lead to burnout. You want to help your students improve for your benefit as much as for theirs. And that's what brings me to today's episode. And I'm very excited about these 4 topics. To be honest, all 4 of these topics will probably be an episode on their own in future videos that I will do. But today we'll go over them pretty basically. And today it's all about developing your craft, becoming a much better tennis coach. So the first item that we're going to deal with, number 5 in our 12 items that every tennis coach should know, is the idea of understanding the 3 primary modes of learning. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but there are 3 primary ways that all people learn: visual learners, audio-intellectual learners, and kinesthetic learners. And we'll talk a little bit about all 3 of these things, especially in a future episode. But the idea is to understand that everybody learns in all 3 ways, but we all have a primary way that we really love to learn. I love to read books, listen to podcasts, see lectures. I am very much an audio-intellectual learner. Show me something, I might get it. Have me do it, I might get it. But explain it to me, have me understand it intellectually, I'll get it for sure. Some people, it's the opposite. Visual learners, you can explain it perfectly, and until they see it, they won't get it. For kinesthetic learners, and since we're all tennis coaches coaching a physical skill, many of our students have to feel it. They have to do it before they will understand it. Early, before I became a tennis coach, I had big dreams of being a basketball coach, and I was actually studying coaching, and I did quite a bit of basketball coaching. When you're learning how to be a basketball coach, one of the things they tell you must do is in every practice, you have to show, tell, do. You have to make sure you show your team what you want them to do, tell them what you want them to do, explain it, and then have them do it, have them repeat it. It's the same thing. Visual learners, show them, demonstrate. Audio-intellectual learners, tell them what you want them to do, explain the concepts. Kinesthetic learners, have them do it. As I said, this is a massively big topic, and we'll dig into it more in the future. But for now, try to understand what is your primary method of learning and teaching. Sometimes I'll have a student and we just click. It's almost always because they're an audio-intellectual learner and they get on the same wavelength as me gabbing and explaining it. Sometimes I'll really struggle because I talk too much and I don't have the student do enough for the kinesthetic learners. So remember, show, tell, do. Try to pick up the clues on how your student learns and understand your strengths and weaknesses as a teacher. Number 6, the next topic, know your stuff. And number 4, I talked about how not depending on your personality only was important. So the more you know, the more you learn. There's tons of places you can learn more about the concept of what you're teaching. And I've tried to stay away from that here in these videos to sort of hammer home my philosophy of what you should be teaching. But this applies to any teacher, no matter what concepts you're teaching, really know them. And today I want to explain what I mean by knowing your stuff. You want to know it on 3 different levels. Level 1 is know your stuff as a player. What works for you? What do you understand? A lot of tennis coaches, they stop here, and we're going to talk more about that in just a second. But I really believe that the things you know the best as a player, you will teach the best. I think I'm one of the best teachers of the use of the opposite hand to touch the strings on the fingertips as a coach, because it helped me more than any other concept I've ever learned as a player. So I'm a great salesman for this concept. Understand the concepts that you're teaching as a player, and you will be a great teacher of those concepts. Level number 2, you want to understand the concepts that you're teaching as a teacher. And this is obvious, of course, but what I want you to understand is the real secret to being a teacher is knowing what to leave out. It's very, very easy to overload your student with too much information. What would help that particular student the most? What's the one aspect of that forehand that you can teach them that'll really click for them? And you can leave out the other things. You don't need to teach every student all that you know about every stroke. As a matter of fact, that was one of my biggest mistakes as a young teacher, is I wanted to share everything. And the final level that you should know your stuff is as a coach of coaches. And this is why I loved training coaches and why I love doing these videos. When you're a coach of coaches, you don't want to leave anything out. You want to dig in, give the coach every possible aspect, because the more a coach knows, the greater their menu of things that they can use becomes. So know your stuff means understanding the concepts that you're teaching on 3 different levels. Level 1 is as a player. Understand what works for you and why it works for you. Number 2 is as a teacher. Understand what to leave out. Learn to choose what's going to be important for that student and that student only. And number 3, keep studying so that you could train other coaches. Do you know everything there is to know so that you can really help those coaches in all levels? Number 7, and the third topic that we're going to cover today, is watch lessons. I think there's incredible value in watching teachers teach, because you don't have the pressure of satisfying that student. You can watch it from the standpoint of just analyzing what's working and what's not working in that particular lesson. It's a great way to pick up new ideas, new coaching tips, new drills. It's really a great way. So watch lessons all you can. But I will warn you, the most natural thing to do is to substitute your judgment for the judgment of the coach doing that particular lesson. Try not to do that. It robs you of the learning opportunity. If you're sitting there thinking, geez, I would have done this instead of that, you're not really paying attention to what's going on in the lesson. You're not listening to what that coach is saying. You're not observing what they're teaching. You're not paying attention to, is it working or not working for that particular student? So learn to watch a lesson just with the idea of stealing what's working well for that particular coach and that particular student. I love the phrase that good artists borrow, great artists steal. I can absolutely attribute most of my success as a tennis teacher from all the great ideas that I stole from Peter Burwash, the late great Rob Smith, all kinds of tennis teachers that I've observed in their training, tennis coaches at every level. I used to joke that in my 50 years of teaching, I've only made up 2 drills. Every other drill I've stolen from somebody. So learn to watch lessons, but watch lessons in order to steal great ideas. It'll help you become a great coach. And the final topic for today is learn to care for your students. If you're watching this video series, I'm probably preaching to the choir, because if you're watching this, I already know you want to do better and you care about your students. But what I mean for caring for the students applies to something I learned a long time ago from Peter Burwash, and it's called the 50-50 theory. Let's talk about a tennis lesson that really wasn't that successful. In talking to many coaches while observing their lessons and the lesson wasn't successful, the natural reaction for many of us is to blame the student. Geez, she's just not that athletic. He wasn't listening too well. That student never practices after the lesson. It's a way of getting ourselves off the hook. Once you start taking responsibility for the lesson, oftentimes we go the other way. You think you're 100% responsible for the success of that lesson. I know that in my early years of teaching, if the lesson didn't go well, I would beat myself up. I would think that it was all my fault. I didn't understand what the student needed. I didn't choose the right drills. I didn't bring enough energy or enthusiasm to the lesson. Now, all those things might have been true, but when I was talking with Peter Burwash, he explained to me that every tennis lesson is a cooperative endeavor. And he explained the 50-50 theory to me. And I tell you, it's been one of the greatest things I've ever learned. The 50-50 theory is just this. In order for the lesson to be 100% successful, I'm going to put in my 50%. I'm going to bring my knowledge, my enthusiasm, my drills, my tips to that lesson. That's my 50%. The student must bring their 50% back into the lesson. They have to listen. They have to try. They have to be open-minded. They have to ask questions. They have to really be involved as a participant in the lesson. So once you get this 50-50 idea, it becomes pretty easy to achieve successful lessons. The 50-50 theory is also an amazing tool to use when you're coaching junior players. In all my years at Camp Takaho, the first week I spent a lot of time explaining the 50-50 theory to the campers. This way, we made them responsible for coming to the court with their effort. That it wasn't just show up and the tennis coach would do all the work. We promised them we would deliver our 50%, but it was up to them to bring their 50% to make the lesson 100% successful. So I hope the idea of the 50-50 theory helps you. And today's topics were massive, and we went through them in just a few minutes, but I know your time is valuable. So remember, learn the 3 learning modes and 3 learning methods. Know your stuff. Really develop an understanding of your tennis concepts at all 3 levels: player, teacher, coach of coaches. Learn to watch lessons. Steal all the good stuff you can. It'll only make you a better coach and help your students. And finally, care for your students. Explain to them about the 50-50 theory and get them to cooperate in the success of the lessons. Once again, thank you so much for watching The Joy of Tennis Teaching, and good luck out there on the courts. I look forward to hearing from you.